And warm welcome for the first session of Mobility Track. So we are going to talk about design principles for building great apps, and we'll cover some of the principles from design perspective. It's going to be platform agnostic. I'm not going to talk about Microsoft specifically, but the principles which we have applied will be just walking through across or while building applications. What makes an app a great app. A little bit about me, I already mentioned, I'm Ujjwal. I work as a technical evangelist at Microsoft, and the contact details are there. I'll share it one more time. If you have any questions after the session, you can always get in touch with me. All right, so the agenda for the day is we are going to cover mainly the UI design and interaction guidelines and principles to build great apps. Mostly what happens across platforms we have seen, there are a lot of reports which we have looked at. We have found applications are being developed across all the platforms at a greater pace. A huge number of applications are there, hundreds and thousands of applications are present already. But there are a significant number of apps. For example, 26% of the app out of 600,000 apps on iOS platform has never been used once or used only once. It's a huge number to think about. Why, when we put so much of effort and we make apps, why users are not liking it, why they're not using it at all, or what's the reason why we can, or why should we focus on certain principles to make sure that those apps are actually being used by users, they like the experience, they come back to the application, and we as a developer get the opportunity to make money out of it, right? If they're using it, so there are multiple ways of looking at it. Of course, we want the user to have a best experience and also come back to our application. So we'll look into this whole scenario through this talk. And just wanted to have a quick raise of hand. How many of you are already designers here? You can please raise your hand. None? Okay. And developers? Okay, many. Great. So this is actually going to be good because the session which you are talking about, it's more towards the design principles where we as a developer can get that and understand the whole concept of these design principles and implement them, incorporate them when we are building applications. So quick beginning, from designer's perspective, what do you think, or from a developer perspective, what do you think of life? Like when you're building an application, what is life to a designer or developer, or to an end user who's using an application? Can I have anyone can answer that part? So simple user interface, great. Simplicity, I would take as a keyword. What else can we think of? Should be beautiful, right? Should be beautiful as well. Of course, I should be able to browse through the application with simplicity. It should also be intuitive, in the sense I should, as a user, be able to go through the application, understand the application, beautiful. Some of these things are there. We'll come back to this question. I'll answer this question a little further in more detail. But before this, most of the application, when we're building application on desktop environment, we sometimes end up like this, be it on any platform. There are scenarios like, applications coming from area wherein you have multiple menus, multiple, options, giving user options, and sometimes you end up like this. This might work on a desktop environment sometimes. Even this is not good for a desktop environment, any platform. But if we try to push this on a small device or tablet or a mobile, for example, how does it look like? Obviously, it's something which we cannot use, right? This is definitely not usable or acceptable in any platform when we talk about different small screen sizes, right? It definitely is not a fit over there. So it's quite obvious, and I also mentioned earlier, just a couple of minutes back, that 26% of the application, this is Localytics resource, and there are multiple data collection agencies which are given multiple resource, reports like this, that applications are not being used or used only once. So we are going to talk about this. So obviously it's kind of evident that we cannot have that whole, all those menus and options given to a user like in this format. It's definitely not feasible and not usable, not recommended. Now the question, and this is something like an application which is not liked by the user, it's like a dead fish. Never to be used, not to be consumed. It's all, just lying there somewhere, but it's of no use. Not for the designer, not for the developer, not for the end user. So how we cannot work, or what are the things we should work on? So something which is very, very important to understand, nothing is going to design on its own. Even as a developer, we have to look at these principles. We have to incorporate this thought process into our way of looking at things, building things, and so it's very important. Do I need a designer? It's a kind of question we should always ask when you are starting to build an application. And if I was supposed, so I'm also a developer, by the way, and coming from a development background. So if I would have designed something, I probably would have ended up something like this, right? And this is not to raise questions on your design skills. Of course, there are scenarios wherein people think creatively, and also being a developer can design something interesting. But looking at principle, and professional kind of aspect of aesthetics, we really need to think about what kind of principles or what kind of designer do I need. So yes, the question is, do I need to have a designer? Yes, you definitely need to work with a designer to make sure that your app is professional, and design is too much of a burden to put on a program, and this was something which Donald Norman mentioned. But now, through this session, I'm trying to go ahead and keep some key principle points in front of you, so that when you are thinking as a developer trying to build application, you would be able to probably incorporate that in your thought process, and when you're building and designing application, it can give a better experience to your end user. So starting with modern user interface, and this image is not new. If you look at this image actually is taken from metro stations, railway stations, public places. And what's interesting about this image is that there are multiple languages used at multiple locations. But while we are at certain location area, even without we understanding that language which is being taught over there, what's written over there, even without understanding that language, just by looking at the icon, the signs, symbols, we are able to make our way to that particular direction where we want to go, right? So that's one of the key principles, is icon plus graphics, iconographics, which is very much applicable when we talk about or think about the small screens, the tablets, the mobiles, okay, those kind of devices. So a lot of principles which we have incorporated, and I want to share that part through this talk, is to have this in mind. And what are the key things which you have learned from this? I'll just share that part. So again, the same kind of design here, something written in Chinese, but we still are able to see, like from the circles, go ahead, left, right, and so on. So some of these things, content before Chrome, and I'm going to switch between my application, and I have a mobile device which I'll also project and showcase some of the applications which have followed these principles, and how different it looks like, how different it is from user experience, and has been rated top among couple of platforms. So we'll look into that part. So I will not read this, but I'll actually show you all of this in few minutes from now. So one of the most important thing is minimalism. So when I showed that whole app, that clumsy application on that even for a desktop platform, and definitely not acceptable on a mobile platform, is how you can cut short. So the most important thing is minimalism. Cut down to the aspect wherein it's liked by the user. It's user can experience it. So important thing. As I mentioned, the key thing which we talked about earlier was iconographics. So a lot of icons can be used in such a fashion that the graphics or the icon part which is over there tells a story or tells something for a user to do. So you can use some of the iconographics over there. There are a lot of gestures, and we'll explain this in more detail. In fact, for example, this is one of those key input controls. So a lot of controls are available for different platforms, and when you look at controls, specifically user input controls in mobility and in mobile devices or a tablet. It's the span of attention for a user to look at in a small screen is very, very low. Okay? If you ask them to write something, even they're using a stylus or by fingertip, of course, it's very difficult for them as the end user to write something or give too much of attention for writing. Reading is acceptable to a certain extent. So in this case, what do? Provide something as an option to an user even when you have to take input from them, rather than having them write something. For example, list box, try to give them options. Use list box and give them options to select from, rather than writing something over there. That's one of the key things we should always think of. Well, similar kind of calendar control, we'll jump into that quickly. In fact, let me do this. I am going to project a device and show you something over there. So this is one device, okay, and let me show you calendar first. So, for example, this is a simple UI control, okay, and if I have to look at particular calendar, I can look into this. I can see, and then if I have to add something, for example, when. So at particular date, so I have options of selecting, right, from this. I don't have to type anywhere. So this really gives me a better experience as a user than typing something or focusing where to type and what kind of option. So this is something which is important. Think about it when you are building applications. So even for example here, I have a different calendar, so I can switch between calendars, and there are options for me to switch, right? So it's easier for me to use this device over there. Okay, coming back to the presentation, I'll switch back to this device and some more applications for tablets. But coming back to the principles first. Okay, so when we are designing applications, some of the key things we should be looking at, what kind of application we are designing, whom we are targeting, what kind of user who is going to use this application. A lot of applications are already there on multiple platforms, like be it Android, iOS, or even for that matter, Windows Phone or store. So a lot of applications are already there. Now, when we are building applications from scratch, what kind of differentiated factor we are going to give? What kind of it's very, very important to understand the competitors in any domain. Okay. So if you're looking for building an application which is already there on, let's say, iOS platform, you're building from Android perspective, we should always look at what's key thing which is already there on that platform, and then what kind of differentiated facts or what kind of features or probably wow factor you can give to the end user by building that kind of application. So it's very important to understand that. What kind of content is going to be displayed is another important thing we should always look at. Okay, there are multiple Twitter kind of applications, basic Twitter kind of applications, right? But when we look at or newsreader kind of applications, but then the content which is being displayed on that is important. So how you are going to do that display or give that user that experience is important. So I talked about content before Chrome. We will talk about this. But my question was, what is life, right? And when we talk about designers, it's about layouts, inputs and interaction, focus and events. Okay, and I'll describe this in more a bit, and then we'll talk something beyond life from designer perspective, and we'll you use those principles which I'm talking about. So orientation. Okay, so it's important to have a right orientation for any kind of application which you're building. And if you have to, for example, games, right? I'll just switch to probably, let me see if I have a game here. So if you look at games, I really want to have a wider screen, a screen wherein I have a landscape mode. I would like to lock it to that wider screen rather than support it on a vertical screen or a portrait mode, because the user, as a user, I may not have the full view and the full kind of experience which, as a developer, I would like to provide to end user. So we should lock that part, portrait mode, or that's very, very important to look at. Then I quickly jump back to some Chrome and content part which I mentioned here. So look at this, something like a RSS reader. Now, earlier when we used to develop our right application, we will probably use tables, and focus areas. Now, as a user, that is not really required, If I'm using an application, it's not, as I think about end user. As a user, I don't really want to look at what that application is doing, kind of content which is there, or kind of layouts which is there. But as a user, I would really like to use that content and consume that content. For example, if I'm trying to buy something, it's an application which helps me buy or purchase an item. I would rather like to know more about the items which is displayed in that particular app. I would rather like to focus on what kind of prices, what kind of features are being provided by that particular app, rather than how it's a grid layout or is it a canvas. I would not focus on that. It's not my concern as a user. If I am a social, if I'm building a social application, probably a Facebook kind of application, let me just in fact show that to you. So if and in fact a good example, LinkedIn application is one of the great app which has been built. If I just open this LinkedIn application, for example, it's a app. Over here again, you don't see any grid or canvas kind of thing. All I'm looking for, I'm just looking a little while, but again I see that there's on top bar there's options showing me that something is loading, right? So even if my patience area probably is low as a user, I still can see that something is happening, right? So this is important. Always try to have some kind of interaction with users, even though it might take some time because of network connectivity, it depends on network, but you still have that option, right, to show that. Now this is one example. I have what are the options over there? So I see a couple of things here. Even I just entered that application, network is still connecting, but I still see there are certain things like tiles over there. There's some content which is coming up, and there's some content which is actually changing. So my attention to this application of focus is still on. I even though it's a small screen, I am not losing my patience over here. Now, if I look at the other things, so for example, inbox in this example, right? I see a 0 over there, and I also see an icon. So I know just by looking at it, it's very intuitive. Just by looking at it, I understand that, okay, this is for my inbox and there's no new email. Groups, companies, jobs, right? And me. So I can see all of that. And if I click on, messages, probably I won't really want to show a message right now. And for example, this is a good demo here. So internet connectivity is not good, so I just get a message, right? Oops, something went wrong, please try again, right? So as a user, I do not lose that whole, coming back to that application, that whole sense of thing is still there. I would like to come back and see what happened. But if I really have not got that kind of message, it would have been just, displaying nothing at all, probably, or something which doesn't make sense to me. I would not like to come back to that application, simple as that, okay? There are some good other applications which I will show. This is one of the applications which we have on both the platforms, like a phone and a tablet. And I'll show that in more detail. So this is a simple application which was built to demonstrate different types of cocktails. And this is a paid application. This is not a free application. We have a free version and a paid version. Now this application, if you look at the name, right, it looks like mainly meant for people who consume alcohol, but not necessarily. Okay. So in this case, the application was designed in such a fashion that users who don't even drink, just they have, out of curiosity, would like to know what are the different things which are being used to make a cocktail, what color they look like, or what are the contents which are really important. So all of that is available on this. So for example, and if you list this, so I can check this application through by cocktails, by bar stock, by different types of guides. So even though as a user I might not drink any alcohol or consume any alcohol, but I still be able to look at and come back to this. And some of the principles, look at the typography, the layout. I really don't have a scroll bar over there. I really don't have a list box or control over there. But all of that is actually implemented at the background. But as an end user, I don't see that. And I really don't care about that at all. As end user, I really want to have and understand the content which is being provided to me. So it's very important to have a look at it. Okay. I will again come back to this, and we also showcase some of the key things, principles. We'll discuss more on that. Okay. So other thing, very important thing is to also have an immersive experience. So not necessarily that you have to present content all the time. Okay. It's also important to use the background of your app. Make a whole immersive experience, give that to end user, be it on any platform. It's very important. So in this case, for example, I have the background which actually means for that particular game, it relates to that particular game. So as a user, I don't have to really look at the specific content, but the whole experience is immersive. I really would like to come back to this particular game or app at some point of time. Now, the second thing from life was input and interaction. This is also very important. So most of the platform, we get different types of gestures, different types of input options, right? For example, we get tap, double tap, pinch and zoom. So all are touch based. So always it's very important to understand what kind of input options are being available on any platform, right? And now these days it's all about smartphones or tablets. It's all about touch. So of course, so design for touch first. It's very important to have that thing in mind. Of course, you should also think when you're designing for touch, there are a couple of other ergonomic factors which comes into picture. For example, finger tip, it will vary. It will vary from a user who's using it, if it's a kid or a teenager or a old grown person, that whole tip will vary. So tap, double tap, all of that would vary from user to user. Now, I already talked about and mentioned it. You should think about users. This is very important. Other input options is something like platform or device specific. For example, you get accelerometer, right? You get GPS. Now, all of that is available, but we should also be aware. We cannot be just agnostic, about that. All of this is going to be present in all the devices. Not necessary. Not necessary. And even if it is there, for example, GPS, my battery is not there on the tablet. It's not very strong. So probably the GPS, the first thing I'll do is I'll turn off the GPS as a user, right? I definitely want to use a phone as a phone first rather than GPS device. So it's very important. So when we're building an application, it's also important that while we give those choices of inputs, we should also think and design when we're designing that probably that options are there, may not be there, but how we are handling those situations when that option, even being there, are not suitable or not to be used. For example, plane, in-flight mode. When you are in the flight, you definitely are not going to use any network connection onto your phone or a tablet, right? So think about that. So, I also wanted to talk about, in this case, while we're talking about interaction, think about context menus. And I have a quick example of that. When we are displaying some products, okay, for example, an app which is selling some items or to end users. Over there, you don't have to have specific command at the bottom. For example, we always have this arrow command at the bottom, you can see here, right? All the time we have arrows written something. Not necessary. When we're now designing applications, when we're building applications, we can use that same text as a clickable option, right? Not necessary to have that arrow all the time. It just looks redundant, right? As a user, I don't really want that. As a user, I would be more intuitive. I just want to click on that, and go ahead and use that concept. So no need. Again, coming back to other important thing, which is focus. So I already mentioned, focus for screen, especially smaller screens, for user, the span time period is very low. So we have to make sure that the focus is on. I already gave an example of making selections for calendar, but context menus and animations, lifestyles, these are another key things which you should always keep in mind. So for example, context menus. So here again, a selling kind of application, we have something like a product name, and then we again give some options, a rating, not required all the time. Okay, when we are designing applications, you can give context menus, you can choose things based on the selection of that particular application. Give options when that particular product is selected, Okay, so for example, any particular product name is there. I should give an option of checkbox when I'm selecting that particular option, rather than having it all the time. It doesn't look nice because the whole screen is filled up, and when it is all filled up, it's difficult to focus and concentrate on one particular item. Okay, so it's important to have that part. Other thing is there's something called flyouts. And in Android platforms we have widgets, something like that. Okay, wherein we can use this. These are small, lightweight flyouts. We can just have that pop up whenever it required. But again, it's important to understand that we should not use it all the time. It's only required to be used when that menu or item has to be shown. Otherwise, not. Important is events, and I'll just go a little beyond life in that whole layout, input, focus, and events. Beyond life, a couple of more things which makes things more beautiful, right? And also simple. For example, and stickiness is added to that app, which is I would like to come back to that application to use it. So fast and fluid. And when we look at this is something like an example over here. A keyboard coming up. So let me just jump to this demo quickly. I have something like a search option. If I click on this, I can see over here, I can type over here. But if I have another application wherein I want to have input from tablet, let me do this, probably lock my machine. Okay, and so this is the example, right? Animation, the keyboard coming up, and it's not coming up, it's a nice animation. And if I look at that perspective, it's important from a user that I like it, right? So have that kind of thing over there. And then you also see when I'm typing, that just goes off, right? Because that's not required on that particular screen. When I'm started typing, I really don't want that. So as a user, focus on that part. Okay. Sorry about that. Back to the whole principle. I have a couple of more minutes, so I'll just go through that and then jump into some more demos. Okay, other thing, these are something which I want to show quickly in terms of the new stuff which we have come up with, and of course you can also apply to a couple of other platforms. For example, in tablets specifically, you should always think of multiple views, because now the tablets or the phones are coming off different screens and different sizes, different resolutions, right, all the time. So how we can incorporate that is very important. For example, I have something like the same app which I just opened, and I'll quickly jump to that application. So this is an application, again, the same app which was running on the phone is there on tablet. And if I'm looking at this app, from a screen perspective, I can use it in a scenario, probably, or maybe just let me open another application over here. This is another application which is built by India team. Probably let it open at some point of time, and I want to use this application in a scenario wherein I would like to snap. So I'll look into different particular views. So this is one view, okay? This is wherein I can snap. I can have a particular view like a gallery, but I can also look at the main application in reduced screen size. Now this is also important while in a tablet scenario. Of course, you can't do it on a phone, mobile scenario, but think of different screen size. Different screen is very, very important. So if I'm looking at that whole principle again, we should always think of multiple screen sizes, okay? And that is important when you're designing visuals that using the Photoshop. Ask those guys to actually build multiple visuals based on different screen resolutions, and you should always know your screen resolutions. It's important to understand that part. Okay. Another thing is about tiles. We mentioned about and tile thing is new, came out from our design principles, but then it's something which is really interactive, makes user come back to the application all the time. It adds stickiness to that application. For example, I have something like a Yahoo Cricket, okay? Now, I'll switch to that application. Or for that matter, any other application, I have this application like my Hotmail also. It's a simple mailing application. Now here, as much as new emails coming up, here I can see, 9 applications coming up here, right? Or an application like ESPN. I have ESPN here, and Yahoo is also there, in fact. So if I open Yahoo Cricket, right, there are multiple matches going on all the time. As a designer, as a developer, I should always think of this application being used all the time by user, right? And that's how I win, or that's how the company with whom I'm working is winning. And also the user coming back to that application, it's an experience to them. That's why they're coming back. So how we can actually utilize that whole concept and principle. So tiles give you that opportunity. For example, you can have tiles with multiple different matches going on simultaneously. Each tile can represent one of those matches going on. As a user, and I'm sorry, there's a slow network connectivity again, so it takes a little bit of time here. But I just wanted to explain here. So each match, for example, World Cup with T20 going on, there's some ICC tournament going on, probably, or some local matches going on. So you can have tiles of multiple matches, and then you can give users option to pin those tiles to the front screen, so that even as a user, if I'm not using an app or a match at a given point of time, I still can look at the score. So I can come back to that tile and look at the score while I'm working or doing something else at given point of time, right? So that gives me, that stickiness, adds the stickiness to that particular application for end user, okay? And this is one of the example here. So we have like a couple of recent matches here, right? And those matches, I can pin them onto the start screen. So specifically that particular match which I'm interested, I'll be able to view them in this screen itself, right? And this is something which you can also do on other platforms. I mean, you can think about widgets, have them, bind to that particular widget, and then give user an option to switch to a particular. And this is, in fact, available on this platform as well, like Windows platform as well. I can have a tile pinned to this screen, which is the first start screen. I can put the tile over here as well, okay? So, I can see that particular application, the way some information I want to put it across to end user. I can do that as well. So it's important to have that concept in mind as well. Okay, coming back to some of the other principles, apart from tiles, and this is some of the tile examples, for example, and this is really important, as we look at the start screen of different devices, we can customize a device, a same device for end users, for different types of end users. If I'm a cricket geek, buff, very, very interested in cricket, I can have multiple tiles, multiple, icon graphics for that particular cricket match. And if I'm a music lover, probably have multiple, tiles or apps start up onto my screen. So on, and really gives me an option of customizing the device as per my end user use. Another thing is notification, and this is available on all platforms. Very important to understand that notifications are core key part of your application design and development. This also adds to stickiness. This also gives user to come back, an option to come back to your application. We have this tile notification, which is on to the tile, or the different types of push notification actually. Toast, which comes on the top, or you can also give images or icons onto this, and this can be programmed very nicely, easily on any platform. The last but most important part again is to have the user giving an opportunity to use the same app on different platforms. That was a question again asked. So think about designing and developing an application with multiple tiers. Always think of a cloud kind of scenario. Could be any cloud, okay? Not necessarily specific, a platform cloud, but could be any cloud that gives user an option to switch between devices easily, okay? If I play a game, for example, if I store my data onto the cloud, I can play the same game onto my mobile phone and a tablet. I don't have to have different scores all the time, right? There's a very popular game called Wordament. Okay, I just have to make words in a given grid, and that game is not only popular because it gives me challenges, but it's also very popular because at the same given instance, people across the globe on multiple platforms, be it Android, iOS, or Windows Phone, they actually can play, or even tablets, they can actually play at the same given time of period, and they can make words, form words, and as soon as much, like for example, 8 by 8 grid is there, I make word out of it, and how many words I am making, I get an instant score across the globe, right? How challenging is that? How interesting is that for a end user? So it's very, very popular. Think about that, and that is only possible when you have something, data layer at a crowd level. If you don't have that, it's not possible. Another thing is switching between two applications. If I have done some settings for my usage, as an end user, I probably would want to have the same kind of setting on multiple devices. I should not want, use this as a user that every device I go and change and do some kind of setting all the time on multiple devices when I switch. So that kind of setting can be stored onto the cloud again, right? And that can be downloaded whenever I'm signing with particular account ID. I should be able to use that whole settings onto any device. That's another important principle which you should look at. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. And always have pride in craftsmanship. So very, very important to have specific, focus on pixels. I talked about that earlier as well. The background could be immersive, not necessarily the content, but also the whole images at the background. Do less with more. So it's important. So we need to have that understanding that not necessarily all the time that combo box or grid option, the layout tables are important. Rather, the content is important. So focus on content. Be fast and fluid. So use those animations. Try to give options wherein user can come back to your application with more meaningful ways. Be authentically digital in the sense, use all those visuals, those graphics which you're using, metaphors, use them as your own, probably should not copy. That's what I would like to mention here. Win as one, the whole ecosystem, whatever options you are being provided onto that device, use that. Quickly want to show you this demo, and then I think I'll conclude this talk. So, for example, this is one example, right? I want to search through application, or first of all through my the whole apps which is present through my operating system. I want to search that. Now, when I open this app, and I want to search through this app, okay? So you can quickly see that here, my focus shifted to that particular app, and I'm using the same native option of search which was given by the operating system here, and I'm using that same, and probably I would like to check, let's say tequila, if it is there or not. So I just type in, there is nothing, as probably have written wrong spelling, okay? I'm able to search that, okay? And this is native search. Again, if I want to share something, probably if I want to share that how this looks like, probably I can use some contract, some mechanism to share from this application to other application. And if I want to use the other application content, I can use another contract or shared mechanism to get that content back to this application. So these are important things. Win as one means use the whole ecosystem scenario, while designing and building application. Pretty much, that concludes my talk. In fact, if you have any questions, please take some time out. I mean, we have 2-3 minutes. We'll just use that. You will find most of these resources at design.windows.com and dev.windowsphone.com. Most of these resources are available. And again, my contact details.